This is our first episode, and in this show, I am delighted to welcome our expert consultant, physician and cardiometabolic specialist with over 40 years of experience in treating patients and played a very unique role in challenging scenarios such as COVID pandemic. Hi doctor, I am Gandhali. I welcome Dr. Hemant Thacker to the MediWeek podcast show. Today, we are going to talk about the climate change and its impact on human health. Not just this viewer today, we will also try to seek advice from our expert consultant physician Dr. Hemant on minimizing health risks in our fast-paced lives, changing our lifestyles, maintaining a balance between mental and physical health. So let's get started. So Dr. Hemant, what do you think is a climate change, a humanitarian crisis?
So remember, about 3.5 to 4 decades ago, it was Vice President Al Gore of America who first lit the flame and brought climate change to center stage. And the seeds that he sowed are now bearing fruit, because climate change is something that we needed to anticipate. Climate change is something that we need to plan for, to accept and then to modify. Absolutely. And climate change today, it may appear to be severe storms, to raging fires, heavy rainfalls, rising ocean levels with different timings of seasons. But if you look at that climate change, it translates into our lives. Absolutely. We get early monsoon, we get hotter summers, we get excessive storms, and that affects our health. It affects our health and the health of our little ones, the health of our senior citizens. And it is this climate change. I am so glad that today Mind's Lab MediWeek podcast has chosen a topic which is hot, which is burning, and which is a topic for the future. Thank you for doing this. Now let us plunge into climate change and see what we need to think of, need to anticipate and move further.
Absolutely, sir. So climate change describes the global warming, and I think we are at a defining moment. So coming to this point again, so do you think, sir, that we are in an era where a lot of greenhouse gases are released and which is impacting our health?
Greenhouse gases, as they are released, they increase the global surface temperature. And it has been seen that in the last 2 to 3 years, over a period of time, the surface temperature of the earth has gone up by almost 1.4 degrees Celsius. It might appear minuscule, but 1.4 degrees Celsius higher over the last 2-3 decades, which we see now in 3-4 years, leads to warming. And this global warming changes evaporation, changes temperatures, changes the quality of the crops that we grow, changes the air that we breathe. And all this, from nutrition to environment to supply demand of nature, affects the human body. And we are very susceptible to this, though it's a small temperature, because it translates into so much more.
So in fact, this is coming to this translation, I think this is a deadly heat waves, which are basically in it is creating an environmental health hazards to all of us. And it has been reported that these heat waves are causing a lot of devastating effect and having a direct impact on the quality of air. So leading to a lot of respiratory diseases. Increasing temperature could also affect the heart health, mental health, leading to water scarcity and ultimately causing infectious disease. So what are your views as far as a recent update or a recent research in India? Any report which you want to highlight?
So I remember from Hyderabad last year, there is a report that there is a surge in the summer of environment altered diseases by almost 1/4. That happened in India. And you only have to look around to see that starting from October, November, going down to February, the number of respiratory pollution induced riding piggyback viral infections, where the thin but polluted air lingers in the environment to which you and I breathe, little children breathe, pregnant women breathe, and senior citizens breathe. Bronchitis, pneumonia, pollution induced increase in asthma, all this leading to finally chronic lung disease. It is the equivalent of smoking 10 cigarettes a day. And this respiratory pollution, today the highest prescription in India is for respiratory ailments. Conversely, if you look at the hot and the heated climates, there is dehydration. People go and drink cold water whenever they can. There is evaporation of all the secretions of the body, as a result of which there is dryness of mucus, so the lung becomes dry. So respiratory pollution, one way or the other, from one swing to the other, whether it is heat waves, floods, wildfires, storms, hurricanes, all that affects the respiration. And that leads to pest or vector-borne diseases. Floods can increase leptospira, malaria, dengue, all vector-borne diseases. So we had never heard of dengue 15-20 years ago in such a severe way. But now we see dengue harassing everybody, initially seasonally, now we find it almost the year round. Malaria was eradicated in 1975, but it has returned to haunt us, probably also as a result of untimely climate change.
Precisely. So coming to the Hyderabad data, sir, which you recently quoted, I think it's really very alarming data. And there is also a new concept of urban heat island effect, which is getting reported by a lot of researchers, and especially in Indian scenario, which is essential implication of a climate change. And it's causing a lot of discomfort to the urban residents. This effect is linked with a lot of respiratory issues or diseases, and the reason for this is precisely the deterioration of the air quality. And probably researchers are saying that the poor air quality could be due to the air conditioners which we all residents are using, which releases chlorofluorocarbons and damages ozone layer. So what are your views on impact of urban heat island effect on air pollution?
So the urban heat island effect is a result of evolved mankind's thinking process that if it is too hot, use AC. If it is extremely hot, centralize the air condition and live in the air condition. They don't realize that you can't live 24 hours and you go in and out of air condition. So you expose your body to a yo-yo effect. And as you said, the emission of these air conditions, chlorohydrocarbons, fluorohydrocarbons, all of that adds to the pollution. So sometimes you add fuel to the fire. The best cooling agent is still cross ventilation, the evening breeze or the morning rush of wind which takes things away. How much we in metros look forward to showers, because when there is a shower, all the floating particulate matter settles down. And all this from hot and cold leads to even cardiovascular problems. When you have excessive heat, there is dilatation of blood vessels. The BP drops. The patient have other cardiac issues because of heat stroke, because of drop in blood pressure, heart rate change, dehydration. Conversely, when it is very cold, too retain heat in the body, there is vasoconstriction. The blood vessels retain heat. That increases blood pressure. That increases heart rate. The incidence of heart attacks is higher at those times. Now, this is a seasonal phenomena which had happened with our ancestors and their ancestors. But we are seeing further precipitation of this because of extremes. Today in Mumbai, where I live, I had never heard that you could get a low of 31 and a high of 38 in the same day. But this is happening. When I was younger and even younger, we used to have 6, 7, 8 degrees, not 18 degrees and 16 degrees. So it is the temperature fluctuation, often interspersed by gusts of rain, that produces the ill effects. And if it affects us, what does it do to the young growing child? What does it do to the developing child? His development is hampered. He also, respiratory problems impair him from going to school. And what happens to schools if they are not properly ventilated, if they are not properly adequately lit because of this cloud cover and other things? There will be cognitive impairment for these kids. There will be a developmental impairment. So this is a chain reaction. If we have to go up to Z, you have to start at A and go and follow all the alphabets till you clean up to Z. And you cannot say that where to start. You have to start now and start wherever you are.
Okay. So now, Doctor, knowing with your years of experience in the field of cardiometabolic diseases, what is your perspective on the impact of climate change per se, and that too categorically the impact of temperature on our heart physiology?
So the heart physiology is very clear. Cold causes constriction, hot causes dilatation. If you allow the body to vacillate too much between the nervous system, where you get fast heart rate with BP, low heart rate with low BP, you are subjecting the heart to stress and strain. And then the incidences of heart failure, heart attacks, hypertensive crisis, palpitations, all this increases. So the quality of life is hampered. You have to be very careful about that. In fact, patients before the change of such seasons used to come and meet us to alter their doses. But now we are seeing it all the time.
Yeah, and this perspective also highlights the point that cardiovascular diseases are temperature sensitive, and it might be considered as a cardiovascular risk factor in the coming future. In fact, many researchers have already working on this concept and generating lot of evidences and understanding the role of heat on the cardiovascular diseases burden. So yes, climate is a challenge to all of us. So what advice will you give to our viewers so as to avoid the climate change induced respiratory diseases?
For respiratory diseases, one has to be extremely careful. If you are not careful with respiratory diseases, where you don't mask yourself, where you see to it that besides masking, you don't take your regular vaccines, if you don't shun the areas which are extremely polluted, then you are going to have trouble. Because in the cold, people will burn fires, which will worsen. The people living around the fires will inhale these things. People at high altitudes will also have problems because of poor circulation. People at lower altitudes will have different problems because of particulate matter. So if you are asthmatic, if you are prone to lung diseases, take your vaccines in time, increase your doses in time, see your doctor. Whether you need inhalers, drugs, be very careful, especially in the susceptible seasons, be careful. Respiratory problems are the largest, and COVID has taught us that the lung is the first portal of entry.
Absolutely. So also to our viewers, sir, what advice you want to give to avoid the cardiovascular risk factors in our day-to-day hurry, worry, curry lifestyle?
Cardiovascular risk factors: hydrate yourself well, take your medication on time. With fluctuating temperatures, get your BP measured regularly. A little often, go and see the physician round the corner. Don't tarry symptoms. If you have a fresh symptom, get it treated. And see to it that you take your medication regularly. That's important.
So do you also see, sir, the impact of this climate change on our sleep patterns?
Definitely, because of this, you find quality of sleep deteriorates, quantity of sleep is interrupted, which translates the next day into lethargy, slowness, irritability, maybe increase the pressure, and then altered eating, altered behavior. So sleep is extremely important. You must see to it, either you live or you sleep in the cross-ventilated open area, or you protect yourself directly from the pollutants.
So, so what can be done to get a good quality sleep? Because I think the sleep disorders are also rising along with other burdens.
So here I want to point out that people who have sleep apnea, snoring, for them pollution worsens sleep apnea. So if you have sleep apnea, look after it. Sleep in well ventilated rooms with fans so you keep getting fresh air. Wear loose clothing. If you need a sleeping aid, under supervision, take the minimum mild natural aid that you need to. Don't eat very heavy before going to bed. Avoid tea, coffee, etc. and avoid using digital telephones, digital screens, laptops and television at least for 60 to 85 minutes before going to bed. Important. Relax. Meditation is the Indian way of therapy. It still is the best way of therapy.
So do you think, will climate change also affect our bone health?
Yes, we are seeing premature fluorosis in a lot of people. And again, because of climate change, your food is a little altered. You can get gastro problems. So your absorption of important nutrients is not there. So you can get fractures because of brittle bones. So one has to be careful.
So I heard one expert saying that in today's scenario, we are drinking a lot of fluorinated water. And precisely now a lot of females are reported to have metabolic disorders, thyroid disorders. So yes, as rightly pointed out, it's really impacting to a larger extent.
Fluorosis is a big thing.
Fluorosis is a big challenge, precisely. So, so what are the implications of climate change on the development of human brain?
So again, the human brain, children, definitely. There will be cognitive impairment if he doesn't sleep well, if he is chronically ill with lung problems, or because of dehydration, contaminated water, because of vectors and other things, he has gastros. And this will lead to poor development. As far as the adult brain is concerned, he can be irritable, his blood pressure can worsen, his metabolic things can worsen. So the productivity and the output of the normal brain tends to drop.
And how can this basically a climate change affect our diet habits?
If the climate doesn't allow good crops, if the crops do not give good grains, if your vegetables, if your grains, if all that is impacted into poor quality food, it's going to translate into poor nutrition. Not only that, because of climate change in rivers and waters, entire species of fish get wiped out. So people who live on fish and seafood, because of contaminated seawater, which the fish lives in, even the fish turns to be not as healthy. So every part of nature, not only the field but the river, not only the river but the sky, not only the sky but the air, and the human being is dependent on all this. You can't hold it You can't burn it, you can't cut it, you can't dry it. It is invisible, but it is pollution. And this is the climate change that we have to aspire for. When they hold meetings to have green gas, global warming, to reduce hydrocarbons, sometimes people don't understand. It takes generations, and now we are seeing that what began in the late 19th century is now translating into the 20th century.
Means like the entire ecosystem is getting affected, precisely. And how to improve in this scenario? So for our viewers, any tips or an expert advice?
So medically, I would say whatever pre-existing comorbidity you have, polish it, see to it you leave no loophole, take adequate medication, preventive medication like vaccines, vitamins. If your diet is insufficient, use supplements. And in places where the diet is bad, you must use additives, food additives, so that you get adequate nutrition. At the first sign of an infection or of a climate-like problem, report to the doctor. Change the environment if you can. We had people who used to burn grass, who used to burn soil. Smoke-induced problems, move it, change it. Burning of hay, all that causes problems, which we have now realized. You burn it in place X, and you get the dirty winds in place Y, miles away. So we have to plan for it, and trifles make perfection. Perfection is no trifle. You can't say that, oh, mere kehne se kya hoga. You begin here, somebody begins there. These little drops will go to form the lake. We all have to put our efforts together. That is the community health. Medical health, I can only say, be aware, be alert, take caution, see the doctor, protect your children, clean your environment, and you will be a happy senior citizen when you age.
So yeah, I mean, from your conversation, what I understood is we are vulnerable. So all age groups are vulnerable. So any specific advice do you want to give to children, of school-going children?
School-going children have to read about this so they understand it, have to be taught so they can construe it. Adults have to be made to realize. Common man does not understand what is hydrocarbon, what is carbon dioxide emission. The lady at home who is burning wood doesn't understand. The senior citizens don't know. We have to educate them. I cannot as a doctor say, come to me in illness, but I cannot give you wellness. I want to give you wellness. And we are at a stage in life where wellness is more important than illness. You stress on wellness and illness will be an arm's length away. So my advice is beware, open your eyes and ears. If somebody is giving you some fruitful advice, follow it, practice it, preach it, and reap the fruits of its harvest. Thank you. It was a lovely topic, and I'm glad that we began and put our small foot forward. Thank you.
So we just heard from our expert on the adverse effects of climate change on physical and mental health. Many researchers are now focusing on the term eco-anxiety, which refers to extreme worry due to hurry-worry culture. Eco-anxiety is to worry about present and future harm to the environment caused by human activity and climate change. From the Indian perspective, we have reports of the indirect impact of climate change on mental health, and shockingly, 60,000 suicide cases were reported in India over the last 30 years. Now we get the 360-degree spectrum on impact of climate change from our expert, Dr. Hemant P. Thacker. Dr. Hemant's enlightening discussion on our MediWeek podcast show remarkably highlights the critical tipping point that climate change poses a serious threat to public health. We all have a role to play, as mentioned by Dr. Hemant, in responding to this crisis situation and protecting our own health from the potentially catastrophic effects of climate change, but using the clinically guided principles as mentioned by Dr. Hemant P. Thacker and preventive measures provided by our experts on this show. We must act on the expert opinion given to safeguard our health from this looming threat. At the end of the show, I would like to extend our gratitude to Dr. Hemant P. Thacker on behalf of the Minds Lab and our audience for sharing his evidence-based perspectives, expert opinion on the pressing issue of climate change. His conversation and act now ways were genuinely enlightening and resilient. Namaste.